This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to the Great Love Debate, the world's #1 dating and relationship podcast. Since 2015, I am here in the very fancy studios of Pod Populi, Podcast for the People. I'm at the one in Palm Beach Gardens, which I don't get into this one a lot, but it's very, very nice in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. It's lovely. So the last show that I did, the last podcast, before I bring in my guest who's going to have some comments on that, I said that I rarely give advice, that I give opinion and I give thoughts and I rarely give advice. In the last episode, I gave advice. And somebody said, well, you're not married. You're like a priest who gives advice to couples. And I actually found myself oddly defending the priest because I thought that the priest actually, he's neutral. So he's not sitting there like, here's how me and my wife do things, and here's how we work it out. He has a neutral perspective. And what he's really doing is creating an environment where people can communicate. So I think a priest, not necessarily giving marriage advice, but creating a scenario where people could work out their marriage problems. I was pro-priest. So there you go. Lapsed Catholic. The second thing, though, that I get a lot of criticism about, and I have for many, many years, is I'm a little too flippant with my dismissal of religion. And I just think that everybody's about the same. I do. I think most religions are the same. I think that a lot of things need to be left up to the interpretation of the participant or participants. I don't think some of the rigid rules really have a place in modern society. But who am I to have these conversations and to bring these things? So I brought in a pro here. Couldn't lure in a priest at this time of day, but I brought in one of my friends, actually. He is the host of the very, very popular Ask the Rabbi podcast. So I'm going to be asking the rabbi some questions about love, dating, relationships, and a few other things. And he's Russian, so probably like why Russian women are hotter, and no offense to anybody who's not a Russian woman. Sorry. He's the host of Ask the Rabbi, and he's been listening to my podcast, and he has some thoughts on that too. Rabbi Leonid Feldman, how are you?
Good. I'm excited to be on your podcast. This is the first time I am being interviewed. Oh, actually, I was on another one.
You said that you listened to my last podcast, and you came in here today, and you go, you don't really believe that, do you? What part of it don't I believe?
There was one line that kind of bothered me. You said, oh, some people say, I'm looking for somebody who has similar values to mine. And you said, forget it. It's ridiculous.
We all have the same values.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get a lot of criticism for that. And then every time somebody says, well, what about this? What about this? What about that? Give me an example. What values do you think 95% of people don't share?
Well, let's take the obvious one.
What's the obvious one?
Millions of Americans
Yeah.
do not talk to their husbands, wives, broke up marriages, don't talk to their children because they voted for the other side.
I don't think that's a value.
Politics.
I don't think politics is a value. I think politics is a perspective on a handful of issues. And you can disagree on issues and not necessarily about values. Because if you ask people, do you want to live in a safe society? Yeah. Do you want to take home most of your paycheck? Yeah. Do you think we should try and help the unfortunate? Yeah. Almost all politics share the same values. Okay. It's when you get into the nuance and the minutia that we tend to fall apart.
So you just said something that I totally disagree with also.
Well, that's why we're here. It's a great love debate.
Yeah, most people agree on many things.
Yeah.
Do you want a safe society? Do you want to take care of the poor? Well, there is 1.5 or 1.7 billion Muslims, and in most Muslim countries, they will disagree with what you just said.
I'm talking about in this country. This is an American dating show. I can't get into. I'm not going to change the way they date in Saudi Arabia. Sorry.
I see.
So I get it. I get that's probably not accurate either. We have listeners all over the world. So this is a Western culture dating show.
Western culture. Okay, so let's talk.
There's arranged marriages all over the world.
Okay, so let's talk about American values. So what do you think about white supremacists? Do they agree with your values or my values?
No, I think they're a fringe. I just said 95% share the same values.
Okay, let's talk about 95.
That's a fringe.
So I just mentioned in my recording literally 10 minutes ago about a march. that took place 2 years ago, 2 summers ago in Oakland, California, where thousands of people were marching and screaming, "Death to America!
Yeah.
Death to America!" Is it not a value? I love this country.
Again,
I almost died to come to this
the percentage of
country.
people who believe that is the same as the percentage of people who are Satanists or Klan members or whatever. They're not in the dating pool that most people are in. That's about 0.001% of the people. You're more likely to run into all kinds of elements in your dating than them. That's not in the main pool. So people look at the exception as the rule. So the people that you're probably going to, the odds of you running into a white supremacist on Bumble are low.
I agree. White supremacists is a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage. But Black Lives Matter. Every Christian organization, every Jewish organization, major politicians stood up and supported that movement. And now we know that it's basically an evil Marxist philosophy.
Okay, that's a different show too, but that is about the movement, not the value. Do most people believe of all colors that Black Lives Matter and white lives, if you get into that? Yeah.
But people who marched in those marches,
That's different.
they supported it. It's not movement, it's human beings.
It's the politicization of a value. That's different. You're basically saying that people are able to take common values and use them for evil means. That's true. That's, again, a handful of people.
Anyway,
so let me get into...
I don't want to go into the tangent.
Right.
But I want to conclude with one line
Yeah.
that, again, I disagree with. Politics touches everything. Everything.
Which is
depends.
why
It affects my life. I just went to the gas station. It affects my life. What the government is making a law this week that they call it the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
What? I'm paying twice as much. You're paying. Well, I mean, people are going to starve in Egypt because of
and
values.
Most people agree that we don't want to pay as much, and a handful of people are controlling that. It's the same thing.
But we vote for those people. This is democracy, right?
Who you vote for and who's in the dating pool are not always the same thing.
Let's talk about dating.
No, let's talk about religion as a fundamental thing.
Okay.
Most people take a lot of guidance and a lot of their behaviors and rules and habits on what they believe is or is not in the Bible, the Torah, the Old Testament, and New Testament. What is actually in there? We'll get into the relationship part of it, but let's talk about dating, relationships, sex. What is actually in there?
Okay, that's a very good question.
Is anything really in there?
Yeah. So I have one of my episodes devoted to a commandment, one of the 10 commandments, which is number 7. You should not commit adultery. And I spent a whole hour basically talking about that the vast majority of Americans break that commandment. Today, women are catching up with men. It used to be just men. Oh, man, what do you want? Anyway.
Is adultery defined as sex out of wedlock or sex with somebody who's not your husband?
Sex.
Which is sort of the same thing, or a wife.
Sex with another person who is not your spouse.
Okay.
And only one has to be married, by the way. It doesn't have to be 2 married people getting together. So even if one of them is married, that's adultery. And adultery, I believe, is threat to everything, to marriage, to society, to family, to children, and so on. Today, 75% of American kids grow up in broken families.
I get that. So adultery is sex out of wedlock, and that is one of the 10 commandments.
No. Be careful. It's not sex out of wedlock. It's sex with somebody who is actually married to another person.
Okay, so 2 unmarried people can have sex?
2 unmarried people, yes.
Oh, see, we're home free, everybody.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And by the way, Judaism, I know you did not grow up with Judaism, even though from what I
grew up
understand.
with Catholic.
Yeah. So I converted probably 500 Catholics over my career. And everybody who converts has to write an essay. Why? Why do you want to be Jewish? What do you like? And every Catholic in my history, a rabbinic wrote, I like the fact that Judaism is so open-minded about sex. Well, Judaism says it's wonderful. It's a mitzvah.
Judaism is rooted in guilt and Catholicism is rooted in shame, and they're sort of the same.
Again, this is your understanding. Judaism says sex.
Judaism, if you're looking for religion, sex is usually fine.
More than fine. Sex. No, seriously.
Right.
Judaism has laws, specific laws, how many times you're supposed to make love to your wife per week. And it goes according to the profession. And the rabbis are very serious. Everybody says today, Jewish women have headaches. This is a lie. The Talmud, the rabbis wrote the Talmud.
Right.
And they say, no, it's the men who get headaches. Men, hey, it doesn't matter. Don't forget your wife. And on Friday night, it's a double mitzvah, which means you're commanded, no matter what, no matter how tired you are, no matter that you came back from your business trip, you have to make love to your wife. And it's written in the contract, marriage contract under the chuppah.
Yeah.
I stand there and I read it. And all the people begin to laugh. I said, what are you laughing? 2,000 years ago, the rabbis wrote there,
right.
One of the responsibilities of the husband is to provide, to make sure that she's sexually satisfied.
Well, there you go, ladies. Lonely ladies.
Marry
Jewish man, and you'll be good to go at least on Friday nights.
That's correct. Now, but the rabbis are so it's interesting. It depends if you're a camel driver or as opposed if you're a donkey driver, which basically today would mean, I guess, a truck driver. Well, still, don't take a trip to Seattle if you live in Georgia because you may not show up on time. So
you have to be home for the
not on Friday night. So they do have distinctions,
right?
Yeah, so they give a maximum 1 month.
Friday night's the Sabbath. You have sex on the Sabbath.
You're supposed to.
You're supposed to have sex on the Sabbath.
Correct, because it's the holiest day, and sex is holy. That's the point. In Catholicism, it may be dirty, or we'll make we have to, but it has nothing to do with procreation, by the way, in Judaism.
Right.
You're supposed to enjoy it. This is amazing. Thousands of years ago, way before sexuality.
So the Catholics and a lot of Christianity is rooted in sex is for procreation and take the pleasure out of it.
Correct.
The pleasure is sinful. The pleasure is evil. The pleasure corrupts.
Judaism says drinking is good, alcohol is good. one holiday a year, we're obligated to get drunk.
It's like St. Patrick's Day for Jews.
It's exactly Purim. You probably remember.
Yeah.
We get dressed up. We go crazy. And I, as a Russian, I introduced my congregation many years ago to good vodka. So we drink vodka every Friday night and every Sabbath afternoon. And every bar mitzvah kid, I say, hey, the day after your bar mitzvah, that day when you become bar mitzvah, you're allowed, with the permission of the parents, to have a shot. And some of them say, yeah, and so on. Anyway.
How does the Bible, the Torah, the Testaments, whatever, regard male and female equality when it comes to dating a relationship? Is it still rooted in the man, please the man, honor the man as the head of the household? Is it still that? Do we still interpret it as that? I know it was written 2,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago.
Okay, so the Torah clearly describes and kind of creates a patriarchal society. Women did not have all the rights. For example, inheritance was an issue. But in terms of real values and education of the children, it was clear that the woman was actually the head in many ways. The woman is put on a pedestal in Judaism. On Friday night, the husband is supposed to bring flowers to his wife, a bottle of wine, stand up and say, Kiddush, sanctify the day, and so on and so forth. So women are very respected. Now, you probably see it, the Chabadniks, the black hat guys and so on. You can see that it's the woman who runs the show. The husband teaches Torah and so on, but it's the woman who is very much in charge.
She's the one who seems to have the personality.
She has the personality. She
has the charisma.
She welcomes people to the house, which is very important. Hospitality is very important. By the way, I mentioned that Judaism is very, very encouraging about sex, and drinking, but it's also many other areas. For example, money. I know that the New Testament says, the love of money is the source of all evil. Judaism says, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. Go, become rich. This is wonderful. Make money, because it says
there's a value.
The fourth commandment of the 10 says 6 days you should work and pursue and do something. Now the seventh day is Sabbath.
Right.
So we do want to have a balance, but you should not be sitting at home and live in mama's, basement and play video games because you're not crazy about that job that is available.
That's going to make you dateable. Now, what How do two people of different faiths bridge that gap? It's more likely that a Jewish guy is going to want to marry a Jewish girl than marry a not Jewish girl.
You know why?
And that is they want to keep the faith going, right?
For two reasons. Number one, legally speaking, it should be that Jewish mother.
Why? As somebody with a Jewish grandmother, and all you Jewish people say it doesn't count.
Okay, so this is how it goes.
Why doesn't it count?
According to Judaism, a Jew is somebody whose mother is Jewish or who converted to Judaism. Why? Even though in the Bible we go according to the men. Abraham was a Jew and so on. And the answer is, unfortunately, a very sad one, because for the 2,000 years the Jewish people were spread all over the world, exiled. Our women were constantly raped. Mm-hmm. So when a woman is raped, you're never sure who is the father. So we decided, Judaism, the rabbis moved it and said, from now on, it's the mother. She knows who her baby is.
Is that the reason?
Yeah.
Huh. So my father had a Jewish mother, which I did not know for a long, long time, which makes him Jewish.
Correct. Your father was half.
But makes me not Jewish.
You're half. That's right.
It's like being a little bit pregnant, no?
No,
like you have a little bit in you. You should be.
It is a strange situation, but...
I'm always trying to ramp up my Jewish cred.
No, that's right. No, I remember you told me.
I was in Hollywood for a long time, and they're like, you went to Holy Cross College. I don't think you're Jewish.
But this is fascinating.
Yeah.
As you probably know, you love Tel Aviv, right?
Yeah, I love Tel Aviv.
You can fly to Tel Aviv tonight and go at the airport and say, I want to become an Israeli citizen. My father was a Jew. And if you can prove it, you get an Israeli passport.
Is that true?
You did not know that?
I did not know that.
It's a fascinating story. Maybe your listeners must know about this.
Well, I don't know if they want to become Israeli citizens, but can I pull that in like Italy or somewhere else where I want to live? Can I go to France? No?
But the reason also is fascinating, because what happened was, as you probably know, for Hitler, how did he decide who goes to the gas chambers? It was enough to have 1/4 of Jewish blood.
Right.
So if you had a grandpa who was Jewish,
right,
whose child was your father, who is not Jewish, and so on and so forth, you still, if you had 1/4, you go to the gas chambers. So Ben Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, when Israel was created in 1948, he said, if you were Jewish enough to burn in the crematoria, you're Jewish enough to come to Israel and become a citizen.
That makes sense.
It's a very emotional, very powerful concept.
We're going to get into the Russian part of this in a second. I got to take a quick break. I have a million questions. I'm here with Rabbi Leonid Feldman. He's the host of Ask the Rabbi, and we will be back right after this. And we are back talking about dating, talking about sex, talking about how you can, as a Jew or a quarter Jew, you can have a lot of sex and you can drink and you can move to Israel and get a citizenship. Who knew? Who knew? What was the big? You grew up in Russia. You were in Russia till how long? Till what age were you?
I was 23 when I left.
23 when you left. What is so? I don't know how old you are, but that's in the 80s. You were there in the 80s. You're still in Russia?
No, I left in 76.
Oh, you left in 76. What was dating like in Russia during that time?
That's a very important...
Because they talk about here, the 60s and 70s were the greatest time to date in America. What was it like in Russia?
The one thing that a lot of Americans take for granted, and they're not aware of what happens in many other places, is the fact that we did not know about birth control. So this was a major, major issue. I remember I read at the age of 15, probably 14, The American Tragedy by Theodore Dreiser, one of the most depressing books, where a girl gets pregnant and the boy is not in love with her and he basically drowns her, kills her. That made such an impact on me that for all those years, I was always scared of what will happen. Because basically, now, on the other hand, abortion was totally legal. And on the other hand, and it's free. On the other hand, the level of medicine was basically 19th century level. So
you can get a free, lousy abortion.
Horrible.
Yeah.
And you can basically be ruined forever as a woman.
Yeah.
So that was major, major limitation. On the other hand, because drinking is such an important part of culture, everybody drinks. Everybody. And there is no...
Is there a drinking age?
No. People say, when I came to America, I saw people were putting juice and vodka on the rocks. And I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And they said, no, I cannot drink vodka straight. I said, why not? Well, can you? I say, of course. At the age of 6, 7, I knew how to drink.
We dilute our vodka.
Yeah. And we say this is a crime. Grey Goose is perhaps the best vodka on this planet. And I see people go to a fancy bar and they say, I'd like Grey Goose on the rocks with cranberry. And I say, you take an amazing vodka that has gone through 60 levels of purification, and then you put ice, which is basically tap water.
Right. Oh, that's true. You're watering down your vodka.
Not only watering, but ridiculous water with chlorine or whatever is there.
That's a good point.
Anyway, so drinking is very important, which means
sex is going to happen.
Sex is happening left and right.
But there's no birth control available, or it's frowned on? In Judaism, is birth control, because in Catholicism, birth control is bad.
In Judaism, birth control, certain types are okay. But in the Soviet Union, there was only one, and this was condoms, which were horrendous and very hard to find.
Don't buy those Russian condoms,
Like
kids.
Everything else was impossible. You walk into the pharmacy and the shelves are empty. Like the milk store is empty. Like the meat. And so it was, you had to bribe, you had to find it, and it was horrible, just horrible.
Now, the good there were not the cultural influences there, because you didn't have the movies and television things that we had in America, right? So your influences were coming from where?
Okay, so this is an interesting question. Back in the 1920s, when the communist revolution took place in 1917, there was a movement among the Bolsheviks and communists, because it was basically young kids who started a revolution, free love. So suddenly they got into this. So there are books now, especially since communism fell apart. We know what Trotsky did. Trotsky fooled around with the wives of his colleagues, of his comrades. He slept with everybody, including Diego Rivera's wife, the famous one, right? It was actually shown in the famous movie, Frida, I think it was called. You see it. He's staying in their house and he's sleeping with they did not care. Morality, as I mentioned, actually, in the episode I just taped right now, recorded now, I say there was no such a thing as objective morality in the Soviet Union under communism. So 10 Commandments were thrown out.
Right.
So do you see what happens? When the values are not important, anything goes.
Well, that's probably true, too. How much did you know about the outside world growing up there? How much did you know about America?
We knew about America only one thing, that there are rich and there are poor, and there are whites and blacks, and the rich exploit the poor, and most of the time, the only thing they showed us on television is a white policeman hitting a black person. And
had you ever seen a black person?
No.
No. How old were you when you first saw a black person? In your 20s?
In my 20s.
So you never saw one in Russia?
No. So when I came here, I didn't understand what racism is all about. I never really understood the concept. I was walking like many other concepts, which I didn't understand.
Right.
I literally did not know that the electric bulb was not invented by a Russian scientist. I never heard about Edison. In one of my episodes, I think it's number 3, I described my first day in the free world when I was suddenly discovering that as a physics teacher in the Soviet Union, they lied to me even about science, about all the inventions. I say, wait a minute, what about the engines? Is it not Ivan Pirogov? They say, who is that? What about radio? Is it not Alexander Popov? They say, who is that? All the Americans were like, what are you talking about? And then I found out there was something called World War II. I never heard about that. It's called the Great Patriotic War. And
really?
And it began not in 1939. It began on 22nd of June, 1941.
The Russians still make the argument that they won the space race, right?
And the war.
Oh, and the war.
That's another thing that people don't understand. They don't understand why are so many millions of Russians actually supporting this war in the Ukraine, because everywhere you go, there are posters of Soviet soldiers winning the war, World War II, Great Patriotic War. Well, we never heard about Americans participating, right? So the war is everywhere. The music, the songs, the movies, even today. So when he stands up, Putin, and says, there are Nazis running Ukraine. We have to save Ukraine. Oh, Nazis. My father died because of Nazis. My grandpa fought in Berlin. Let's go. So that's what's happening. Everything is based on a lie. And this is actually my next episode is about lies, about lying.
All right, well, let's talk about that. So in a culture, do people know, do whispers get out like this is a lie, what the government's telling us? Are they talking about that in Russia?
Yes. Even in my days, if you're lucky, somebody gives you a book or a flyer. Typewriters were illegal. So if somebody has a flyer or an article, and in my case, it was during college times, I met somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew a dissident. And that's why you suddenly open your eyes. Now, in my case, I was actually very patriotic. I was very naive. I was so pure. I wanted to kill Americans, destroy capitalism, bring future, the best society in history, communism to the entire world. My best friend, on the other hand, had a father who would say to him, listen, in school, you raise your hand. Yes, it's the best country in the world. We will fight imperialism and so on, but you come here and we will tell jokes here.
Does it affect how you're dating as a young person, male or female, when you're thinking, because I've made this point on the podcast before, but that how you feel about where you live affects how seriously you're going to date. Because if you have one eye towards another city that you might move, you're less likely to get into a relationship. At some point you knew, I want to get out of the Soviet Union. Did that make you less likely to get into a relationship because you thought that would make it harder?
No, that's not the issue. Most people in the Soviet Union never thought about getting out. It's impossible.
You did.
I did, and I had to go on a hunger strike, went to jail and so on, but most people don't do this.
Most people thought, like, this is so... Do they
this is it.
Did they get married at a young age?
Yes, very early. My sister got married at 21. Her husband was 20. So a year later, she was a mother and so on. This is very normal.
Was there divorce?
Why? This is interesting. Because, you don't buy apartments. You don't buy houses, right? So you live in an apartment, one-bedroom apartment that government gave to your grandparents, maybe. So my sister and I and our parents, we lived in a one-bedroom apartment. When you grow up and you begin to date, maybe it's a chance for you to get out. So you get married, and then maybe you move in with his parents because they have two-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can rent a little apartment. So getting out, that's why people don't wait.
How do people date without? Do people have money to date?
Okay, so this now, no, you're touching on a very important issue. There are no hotels in the Soviet Union. The hotels are basically like a rare one hotel in a city and so on.
Right.
So where do you have sex?
Right.
That's a good question. So one of the most popular things, the most popular person in town will be a guy who has, we call it chata. He has a unique situation where maybe the parents travel or maybe the parents left for a week and so on. So everybody in town says, Valery has a chata. So suddenly we make schedule. I will bring my girlfriend at 6 and you bring your girlfriend at 8 and so on. Everybody gets excited. And there is a movie that I mentioned, I think, in my episode 2 or 3 that I believe every American has to see. It's called Moscow on the Hudson.
Oh, yeah.
With
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams. And there is a great scene there. He goes on a date and he kisses the girl and he says, I have something special for you. And he's holding his hands behind his back. And she says, what? What do you have? And he pulls out a roll of toilet paper. And people are laughing. And I was crying. Because she says, you're so sweet. You know how to please the girl's heart. Because that was better than flowers. Who cares about flowers?
Yeah, you needed something you could use.
And he says, we have an hour and a half. Let's go. Because his friend gives him the key. And so this is how it was done.
What did people do on dates?
On dates, it's actually...
Just drink?
Normal thing. You go to a coffee shop. Or you bring flowers to the girl on a date, obviously. You meet in a public place somewhere in the center of town. And you go to dinner. Dinner is, yes, there is some drinking involved. And then if you don't have that place after a few dates, a friend with a key, you go to the park, perhaps, or who knows?
Go for a walk.
Or you go, yeah.
How is divorce regarded in both Russia or the Soviet Union back then and in Judaism?
Divorce is allowed, permitted in Judaism. Judaism, I guess God understood that people have to be happy, and sometimes it's not a good connection. It's not a good arrangement. Divorce is prevalent. A lot of people get divorced. However, the problem is, and even those who are not divorced, I would say vast majority of marriages are miserable. So, but the problem is, if I get divorced, I'm still living with you because there is no place to move out. So very often people are living in the same apartment. They hate each other's guts. They have not spoken to each other.
That happens here too.
It does happen.
So there's no alimony, there's no child support, but you're just stuck with each other.
Correct. Correct.
Oh, no.
Alimony and child support is a whole other issue because money means nothing in the Soviet Union. This is something Americans don't understand.
Well, it's different now. Have you been back? When's the last time you were in Russia?
Yes, I have been back several times. Now I would not go back because I'm on a blacklist.
Right. But when you went back, what was the biggest change? The grocery stores?
The grocery stores. Amazing. For the first time, I walked into so-called supermarket. By the way, the first time I came, the Soviet Union just fell apart, and I saw huge line around 2 blocks to get into McDonald's. McDonald's became the most popular restaurant in Moscow.
Right.
Thousands of people lined up there and so on. So food, the availability of toothpaste and deodorant and toilet paper, all the basic things that Americans take for granted, we never saw any of this stuff. So I would say the variety. Now, the problem is that suddenly everything collapsed. So I saw intellectuals standing in the streets. I took a group from Palm Beach and I stopped the bus. I said, let's get out. And I saw a bunch of people standing there selling some basic stuff. And there is one woman selling an electric bulb. She pulled it out from her ceiling, and I started talking to her. And she was a professor of biology in a university. And now suddenly everything collapsed because you don't switch the society in one day. That's why suddenly 42-year-olds, 45-year-olds became billionaires overnight because everything was collapsing. It was chaos. It was so chaotic. Somebody who was smart was able to buy a factory for $5. That's right. The system suddenly broke. And so I met this oligarch, I remember, a Jewish guy, 42 years old, and he was already worth $6 billion. So the whole society. So they were very poor people because nobody cares about intellectuals. Suddenly everybody cares about the oligarchs and so on. So
what can we learn from faith, religion, even the rituals and the traditions that will help us in our relationships? There's something that we can take and be like, this is a good foundation, not just spiritually, but lifestyle-wise, that will benefit you in a relationship. Is it the sense of community? Is it the regular gathering? Is it having something in common with other people? I think all those things matter.
Okay, so we could have 5 different podcasts on this, but you're asking a very important question. I will begin by saying that religion is the lack of religion, or the fact that Christianity is falling apart in America, I would say is number one reason for the total collapse of this society, for the crisis in America. That's number one. Now, in terms of relationships, absolutely. There is so much there. Basically, people stop trusting each other. We don't trust one institution. We basically don't trust our Supreme Court. We don't trust our
we don't trust our government.
teachers.
We don't trust our doctors.
Doctors. Teachers are telling
if you can't trust your doctor, you're not going to trust the guy you just went out with once.
Exactly. So trust totally is disappearing. Especially it hurts when you see what they're doing to 5-year-olds, to 6-year-olds. They are ruining their future. And you're right about the doctors. Not only now we're discovering what happened during the so-called COVID
that's a different
lockdowns.
show too. But we've lost our sense of trust, and our trust used to be rooted in our faith. Is that right?
Correct. Faith is the basis of everything. honor your mother and your father and your mother. I speak in that podcast, that episode when I teach commandment number 5.
Why does that matter?
I say, if you don't learn how to honor mama, you're not going to learn how to honor your wife. If this is, everything comes from there. If you don't know, because we learn everything from our parents. So if you don't know the basics, and I came to America.
So it's respect. If you respect your mother, you will respect your
even
girlfriend
if you don't,
and wife.
By the way, it's interesting. It does not say love your mama. No.
It's the entire honor.
Bible never mentions love your mama, because you know what? Love is an emotion today. I mean, but shut up already. No. So I remember when I came to America, I was shocked how children were saying to their father, hey, John, can you... I said, what? Why are they doing this? Because the parents suddenly decided, I want to be a friend to my child. No. Children have friends. They need a father. And this is what's happening also, unfortunately, in the black community.
Right.
The vast majority of those guys don't even know who the father is.
Right.
And we see what's happening.
Well, that's a good point. I was just about to bring that up. Where does love fit in to the Bible? Is the word in there? And I know it's been interpreted on many times. Is there a tangible concept of love, or is it made up of a whole bunch of other things and we spit it out as love?
It's a very good question. Actually, love is there. We have several heroes, major heroes. For example, Jacob goes to the central place in the village where basically it's the water carriers go. Women in those days, you didn't go to the disco. You didn't go to the club. You went to the well.
I went to the well.
Because women,
the well's the hot spot.
That's right. This is where you see the women. And Rachel and Jacob goes there and he sees Rachel, his second cousin, and it says, and he fell in love. So much in love that he was willing to work for 7 years for her. And then his father-in-law is cheating, puts the wrong girl into the tent. There was no electricity in those days. And he says, okay, give me another 7 years, free. Basically, he became a slave for 14 years to get the love of his life. But the Bible, the Torah begins, it's interesting, you remember in the beginning of Genesis, and God saw that it was good, and so it was good, it was very good. The first thing that God says is not good, He says, it is not good for a man to be alone. Therefore, a man and a woman should become one. And this is, I think...
You hear that, guys?
It's a major crisis in America. There is more loneliness in the last 20, 30 years in America than ever before.
And there's more people who believe that they're better off alone.
Correct. So that's right. There are women today.
There are women who believe it.
25% of women in America say, I'm not interested in marriage. I can make a living better than that guy, that loser, and so on.
Because they've lost trust. And they've lost faith.
But I want to actually go back to what you said yesterday in your podcast, because you said, some women say this woman you interviewed, I guess, last week, she says, it's hard to find good men. You say, that's not true. There are wonderful men.
I say there's more good men than ever.
They do therapy and they understand and so on. They're more in touch with their feelings. I disagree.
That there are not more of them, or that doesn't matter?
I believe that there are fewer and fewer good men. A lot of women that I know, and I have been dating in America for a long time also, and a lot of women say they are boys. They never grew up. There is no maturity. And that's why all those apps that you mentioned to that woman, and it's basically, it's even worse, because the guy is sitting on his couch and he goes, yes, no,
yes.
Oh, yes. It's so easy.
It's the gamification of dating.
And what happens is, I think the issue is immaturity means that they're not ready to accept responsibility. And I think the society, and I blame the feminists, by the way.
Well,
feminists,
the blurring of the gender roles have created...
and it started early,
feminine
by the way.
Boys.
It started in the 70s when the professors began to say to the women, hey, there is no difference. You can be just like a man. And women said, women liberation. Guess what? More women are depressed today than 25 years ago.
Yeah, I brought that up. The cost of the rise of the independence woman has been a loss of happiness.
And also because basically they said to them, they lied to them. They said, we're just like men. We can have casual sex. No, guess what? Human nature.
Yeah, they can't. They get emotionally attached.
Men and women are very different. And the problem is,
We're pretending that they're not.
That's it.
Yep.
And a lot of issues also comes in. And look, I do a lot of counseling, marriage counseling. And I say to the woman, do you understand your husband's nature? Do you understand that he's different from you? Well, we went to a fancy resort in Bahamas somewhere, and he was looking at all those girls in bikinis. I don't look at guys. And I say, hey, do you ever talk about what it means, how men look differently at bodies? They don't. This is the problem. Most men don't open up. They don't sit down and say, honey, let me explain to you. Just because I look at a cute girl over there, and you cannot avoid it today, it's everywhere, right?
Right.
This does not mean I don't love you. It's just my nature. We are very different. They always say a man wants many women. A woman wants a man. There's a very different, there is a major gap over there. And I think unless people understand the major difference between the two sexes, I think that it's going to get worse and worse.
Yeah, I think that's, we talk about that all the time. One of the primary driving forces but in the dating disconnect and relationship breakdown is not just the blurring of traditional gender roles in the middle of two generations of people who had it one way and then it changed. It's also the confusion over gender roles. We have guys who don't know if they should hold the door.
That's right.
And a lot of women will be like, of course he should. And there's another pool of women who are like, no, do you think I'm weak? And then it all falls apart from there. So that the guy, you talk about these boys who don't grow up, they are going to the video games because they're putting themselves in an environment where they feel like they can win and they get their confidence back. So this environment is taken, but the men who step outside of that, there is a big pool of guys who are trying to work with the landscape as it is now. That's the pool that the women need to fish in.
That's true, but I actually have a personal example. My very first dating experience in this country, there was this gorgeous girl who was a student at Stanford, and I remember I flew up to visit her for a couple of days, and I'm waiting outside of the hall, lecture hall. She's coming out with 6 books, holding like this, and I say, "May I help you?" And she, interestingly enough, her major was feminism and in America, something like this, women's studies. And I say, "May I help you?" And she says, "I'm perfectly capable of carrying my books." And we were in a relationship already.
Yeah.
And I said, "You know what, sweetie? I don't think it's going to work." I walked away. And you're talking about values. We had different values. People have different values. I felt that as a man, it is my job to be a gentleman. I want to protect. No. But she just came out of the class and where they said, no, don't allow men, the chauvinists and the
I know. The college
misogynists and so on
are not helping.
This is what's happening. So they are confused and we are confused.
We are, I'm going to ask you this question, and you're the only one who's going to get in trouble answering this. I don't think I'm going to get in trouble for asking it. There's a lot of beautiful Russian women in America. Do we want to date them or no?
I get asked this question.
Because in New York, I was just be like, you'll have fun for about a week.
No, I'm afraid that my answer is no, because unfortunately, again, if you understand why they come to America, they're not gold diggers. I don't like that word, but they come from nothing. They come from many cases from very little, and the idea of America, it's like I can marry an American guy. I will drive a BMW. And we know that a lot of guys go on all these websites.
Yeah, they'll find them.
They fly to Tashkent. I met a woman in Boca Raton. I said, "How did you end up in America?" She says, "Well, this guy flew all the way to Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and we
mail order bride. That's a thing."
And basically 3 months later, they got divorced, of course, and so on. But there was something I wanted.
So it's a cultural. What about the Russian woman that it's not that she can't be trusted, is that she's looking for different things?
Yeah, she did not.
No offense to the Russian women listening, but I think you understand what I'm talking about. Yeah. What is it about? They're very shiny lures.
They are. And they're classy.
Right.
And one big advantage is that they are feminine. They enjoy being a woman.
Yeah, they want to look like a little girl.
And I remember, I actually want to give you a compliment about that podcast again that I listened to, where you say to this woman, your guest, you say, the first date, you actually want to pay for yourself? No.
Yeah.
No. you're basically, what's the word, emasculate him.
Yes.
This is terrible.
Yeah.
But again, they're confused and I'm confused. What am I supposed to do? Am I allowed to open the door? Am I expected to open the door for? It's so confusing.
Right. So the Russian women, they understand the gender roles.
That's right. They're feminine, they're traditional in that sense.
They'll still rip you off.
But they come here for a good life.
A good life. That's fair. And that's not an unreasonable request to want that.
But there is one interesting element here, because I dated a couple of Russian women since I got divorced here. And I noticed something else, that there are good things that feminism accomplished. Women do want to take care of themselves. So she wants to have a career. She wants to make money.
Yeah.
Whereas the traditional,
right,
stereotype is, well, I will marry him and I will go to the pool and I will go to the hairdresser and so on.
It's not as fulfilling. The women who have a career that they're passionate about are fulfilled. And a lot of that fulfillment takes away from, I need a man to help fulfill me. So there's pros and cons in all of it.
That's what's happening. So the Russians, they expect basically that you'll take care of everything.
All right. No offense, Russian girls. All right. This is your first time on the podcast. We play something called worst date or first date. So you have to give us either the greatest first date you've ever had or the absolute worst date you've ever had. That could be in Russia. That could be a Jewish girl. That could be here in America. Your choice. A really good date or a terrible date that you have had, Rabbi.
Okay. I do have a story. So I used to lecture all over America, and when I still was not a rabbi, I was in rabbinical school, and very often after a lecture, 5 women would come over and say, do I have a girl for you? Oh, I have a girl for you, my niece, my this. And I had a policy. I was nervous because I am very particular about certain things. So, for example, fat women, I have an issue with that. My mom was very sick, and she was becoming very fat, and this is very personal, obviously. But anyway, so I had a policy. I said, no, I'm sorry. Do you have a picture? I need to see a picture. I have a policy. And most women don't walk around with a picture of their niece. One day, I was in Minneapolis, I guess, and this woman insisted. She says, Rabbi, I think maybe I was a rabbi already. No. She says, please, you have to meet my niece. She lives in Manhattan. She's sophisticated. She's MD. She's working on a PhD. She's brilliant. She published articles. You have to meet her. I say, I'm sorry. No, please, promise. And she was the one who was picking me up at the airport and bringing me back to the airport. So I felt guilty. So I wrote down the phone number. I come to Manhattan. I call her up, and we make a date. And I arrive there. She opens my door, and I want to faint. She's about 260 pounds or something like this. And I am a guy, I'm a gentleman. I smile. I invite her to a nice dinner. We're sitting there and I'm listening to her. Meanwhile, what am I going to do? What am I going to do at the very end? And she's laughing and smiling. It's a nice day. We come out of the restaurant. My heart is pumping. I'm guilty. I'm a nice guy. I'm a rabbinical student. I know how to treat a woman. So I say, I'll stop a taxi for you. And she says, and I open the door of the taxi, actually arrives, and she grabs me. When will I see you? I want to see you again. And she is beginning to pull my arm. And I'm standing there. The taxi is sitting right. I am dying. I did not know what to say. And I don't want to lie.
Right.
I don't know what to say. Anyway, actually, there is a movie that I saw about a rabbi and a priest. I forget that.
Sounds like the beginning of a joke.
It's a great movie. And there is also a scene there, the young rabbi who is not married, and the president basically forces him. Mrs. Goldberg has a wonderful daughter. And and also they're struggling in
so
front
she's
of...
pulling you in and you got away?
I got away. And I felt terrible. I literally pulled myself and I said, go. And I never called her, and she never called me back. But I felt guilty. I couldn't sleep that night. And I said to myself, stupid, you see, you have that rule. Don't break that rule unless you see who you're going to see. So this was the first and only blind date in my life.
Oh, there you go. Is it easier or harder to date as a rabbi, being a rabbi?
It's very hard.
It's hard. Doesn't the position of authority give you some cachet with the ladies?
No, I'm approached much more maybe. No, everybody wants me to meet their daughter and so on, but it's very hard, especially, I've been living in Palm Beach area all these years. I go to Kravis Center, I go to opera or ballet or concert. 15 people come over. Rabbi, good to see you. I like that sermon. I have a question for you.
They want to talk business.
So if I am with a blonde, with a woman, the next Sabbath, 15 people come over and say,
what was the girl we were with?
What did we know?
That's about being known, not necessarily a rabbi.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's another.
Having some sort of notoriety. Yeah, it's got to be tough. I get it. All right. This was very, very fun. You can tell them about your show. Tell them about Ask the Rabbi.
So, yes, I invite everybody to listen to my podcast. It's called Ask the Rabbi. And I just recorded episode 28, where in the beginning, the first few I devote to my life story, which is a very unusual story. I'm probably I'm unique in many ways. I did not grow up knowing anything. I never heard about Passover or Hanukkah. I did not know anything. Never met a rabbi, never had a bar mitzvah and so on. So in the beginning, I explained how I came to religion, how I came to God. And then I explained my passion, why I believe Judaism and religion in general is very important for our society. And I think you will appreciate it. And also because of my background, very often I bring examples from the communist society because it hurts me so much to witness what's happening, what happens on campuses where they're beginning to basically hope and dream about communism. We've seen it. Every communist society in history became evil. 100 million human beings were murdered by totalitarian regimes. And today we have senators and congressmen.
We got to end on a light note here.
Oh, okay.
Dating is a capitalist society, folks.
That's right. That's right.
It is.
Yeah, let's keep America free.
Keep America free to date. You can follow Ask the Rabbi, follow, review all the things on all the platforms. As far as us, go to our live tour schedule, greatlovedebate.com. We have a show August 31st at the beautiful City Winery in Nashville, Tennessee. Tickets are on sale at both citywinery.com and greatlovedebate.com. September 21st, Boston, Massachusetts. Boston is always one of the best places to do a show. We had 2 shows there canceled because of COVID. We are back, and it's going to be bigger and better than ever. Shoot us an email, greatlovedebate@gmail.com, if you have a question for me or the rabbi. I will pass that along. And most importantly, as I just said, please review this podcast. Your reviews mean a lot in the podcasting ecosystem because, as always, at the Great Love Debate, we never stop making love. See you next time.